Welcome to the lighter side of the spectrum, the podcast that celebrates the multiple hats we wear and the juggling acts we perform in life. Whether you're parenting kids and teens on the autism spectrum, navigating the ever-evolving healthcare industry, or building a more inclusive and impactful world, this is your space to find connection, inspiration, and growth. Together, we'll share stories, tackle challenges, and explore how innovation and inclusion create better outcomes for everyone. Because no matter the spectrum, there's always a lighter side. Now here's your host, David Kaufer.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the lighter side of the spectrum. And today I am super excited for our guest. He is someone I've admired for a very long time, have known virtually, and we'll talk about that for a very long time, yet this is our very first conversation. Russ Ewell is the founder of Digital Scribbler, and he is a true visionary in the world of accessible technology. Russ has spent decades creating tools that don't just help people with disabilities adapt, they help them thrive. He's a pastor, a technologist, and most importantly, a relentless advocate for human dignity. We'll talk about the future of assisted tech, how AI, something I'm really interested in, can either widen or close the inclusion gap, and why designing with empathy isn't just nice, but it's necessary. So whether you're a parent, a teacher, or someone building tech for others, this conversation will stretch your perspective and offer a powerful reminder. Accessibility is not a feature, it's a foundation. So with all of that, Russ, welcome. And again, it's great we finally get a chance to talk.
Oh man, I've been so excited about this, and the admiration has been mutual as I've tried to note whenever I've seen anything you post about your life, your family. It keeps me going. It keeps me feeling like I'm not alone, even when I'm surrounded by people where I live. To have known you for so long, and we sort of have followed the trajectory as fathers that's very similar in the spirit and attitude we have about autism, our kids, and advocating for it. So I'm thrilled to be on and appreciate you inviting me.
Well, the feeling is mutual. And just so for people listening or watching to know, this is kind of how unusual it is. I mean, I guess kind of a reflection of the day, but Russ and I met on Twitter. I mean, in the early days of Twitter. I mean, there's no way to go back, but I remember it was very early. Somehow we connected. Those were the days it was easier to kind of find and connect people who had similar interests or, were tweeting about things. And obviously we were both younger, but also had young, and Russ, I want you to talk about your family, but you have two sons yourself who are on the spectrum, and very involved and very passionate advocates for the cause. And that's extended to Facebook. And again, like Russ had alluded to, we've had conversations online, but we've never had a chance to sit down and talk. So this is really special for me. But Russ, why don't you give us a little bit of background? Tell us a little bit about your family and a little bit about Digital Scribbler, and kind of set the stage for us.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. So one of the features of being on Twitter together was football. We both enjoy college football.
Oh yeah.
You being an Oregon fan, me being a Michigan fan, and one of the things that I believe is so important in the autism community, but just in general in the community, is fathers and fathers getting the encouragement and the inspiration to know they can make a big difference and an impact. We have my wife and I have 3 kids.
Okay, yeah.
The 2 oldest are one has autism, the other one has autism and Down syndrome, so they're both in there. And then we have a daughter who's a typical neurotypical child, and we've been at this for about 30 years as parents. And so we began. My oldest was born in Virginia because I lived in D.C.
Okay,
so that's where the journey began, and I knew nothing about it. We did not know that he would have Down syndrome, autism, any of that until the delivery room. And in the delivery room, the on-call pediatrician said, of course, he has Down syndrome. And my wife's, eyes kind of grew big because she knew what that was, but I didn't even know what that was at the time.
Wow.
And so what happened is he had to have surgery immediately because he had a duodenal atresia, a blockage in the intestines that would not have been able to eat if he had not gotten
Oh,
that
wow.
surgery, which is something that is a part of Down syndrome. Oftentimes people talk about the heart condition, but there's
Right.
intestinal blockage, which he had hours of surgery for that. He had to be helicopter flown to Washington, D.C. Children's Hospital. What happened is, as I mentioned, we were in Alexandria, Virginia hospital. What happened, the good fortune we had was that the head of genetics at the DC Children's Hospital happened to live in Alexandria, Virginia, right near the hospital we were in. So he heard the call go out and decided he'd leave dinner and come over and talk to whoever it was, and he talked to me. And I
Wow.
said, "Look, I don't even know what Down syndrome is." And he said, "Well, look, let's start here. First, you have a child. Second, he happens to have Down syndrome." And that
Mhm.
became the feature of the way I thought about special needs for the rest of my life and how we would approach raising them. And we happened to be in Fairfax County, Virginia, which was really good at the time and still continues to be at a level of inclusion that didn't exist then. And Jonathan was put into PT right away to learn how to crawl, and our journey began right up into, when we moved here to the Bay Area, and a lot of other things happened. So my other son was born when we got to here in the Bay Area. He's born in California, and we, of course, didn't know about his autism until about 2 to 3 years old, as a
Right.
lot of people go through. And in having the two of them, our daughter's the youngest, having the two of them has led to a lot of trying to understand, how do you build a family with special needs in a world and community that doesn't always include. And so we began to do a lot of innovative things. But that gives you just a general idea of our family and where we come from and how we got to here.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. So, and Jonathan's the oldest, right?
That's right.
And so was he diagnosed about the same? So you said he was initially diagnosed with Down syndrome,
so
right, at birth.
yeah,
And so when did the autism diagnosis
that
come
came
for
from
him?
California. Once we had Jordan, my second oldest, and he had autism, and Jonathan began to lose some speech. We began to realize that he had autism as well. So turns out one of the guys I went to school with at Boston University, he's a doctor, and so he moved here. That's a longer story.
Okay. Yeah.
He started to practice and decided, because of his interactions with my kids and all he had begun to learn about them, that he would zero in and focus on autism. And so he's the one who helped us be able to figure out that
Oh, nice.
had some of that as well.
So that's interesting. So you said that one of the triggers there, in Jonathan's case, at least again, is that he had acquired speech and then started to lose it.
Yeah, he lost some of his speech. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Of course, there's just, so many different types of stories. Stone, in our case, Stone, had never really acquired speech. That wasn't really the case. He was developing normally, typically, I should say, whenever, with his twin brother, in a lot of ways, that hit some of the milestones, the developmental milestones, even ahead of Ty.
Yeah.
When that kind of stopped, and it's when Ty kind of continued to hit those milestones, and we saw a regression in babbling and in some of those areas with Stone, which started to slowly raise the red flags. But of course, that was such a different era, right?
Yeah.
Even when you're talking about 18 years ago or so, in terms of the awareness, I'd kind of heard of autism, right? Like again, Rain Man.
Exactly. Same here.
Yeah, that was our exposure to autism, and kind of starting to hear little things here and there. I remember kind of, there started to be some questioning about vaccination. Again, it was just kind of out there, though. I mean, it definitely wasn't anything that I was thinking about in a super serious way. But it's interesting, and it's great how much more awareness there is today, and acceptance, right? I mean, I'd be curious in terms of your experience there, what you've seen in terms of kind of the transition from autism awareness to acceptance in your world, down in the Bay Area.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I've seen over these decades really, is that every generation of parents makes a huge difference. And I remember going to an event here in the Bay Area, and a mom spoke at the event and talked about her son. I think her son may have been 24 years old at the time. And I remember her describing what she went through. And when I heard what she went through, I looked at what we were going through and said, this is nothing compared to what she's gone through.
Right.
But because of what her generation did to raise their kids, that'd be the Temple Grandin generation of parent.
Yeah.
We ended up inheriting something far better. Well, I also think that because of our generation of parents, the parents that are coming up now are inheriting something far, far better. And so,
yeah, I agree with you.
I think that's why advocacy is so important. That's why not allowing the difficulties of special needs to discourage you too much, that you don't realize that there is a role and a purpose you can have of not only helping your own children, but making the future better. And when I look around at all of the programs and the knowledge and the awareness, the increasing number of doctors, the fact that here in the, outside the Bay Area, UC Davis is a center for autism, and there are many around the country. When I look at all of that and the way it's inserted its self into the everyday language, in some ways, people understand special needs as autism, even if they don't understand the different varieties of it. I think it's outstanding. At the same time, I think we have a tremendous distance to go, because people are still often afraid of it, don't know how to talk to the parents, don't know how to talk to the kids. And so that's both challenging and inspiring. It's challenging because we would all like to see every kid with special needs be able to easily, or every kid and adult, I should say, be able to easily navigate through society. That's not yet possible.
No.
That's the dream to me, is when the majority of the world not only knows what these diagnoses are, but they understand to some degree how to interact with them, which is why I'm big on inclusion, because inclusion allows people to have an interaction with young people and adults, and understand that their differences are not dehumanizing. It doesn't mean they're less than human, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I've seen great changes and great growth in the school systems, in medical care, in the social services area. I know particularly here in California, I think California has gone to the cutting edge of the social services area. And so, yeah, it's a lot better. And hopefully parents that are coming up now feel a lot of confidence, because not only do you have all those services, you have tons of parents out there that have been through it, that are able to guide you and help you.
Oh, there's so many more resources available now than there were when our kids, and and again, your sons are older than mine, again, so I even had more, as limited as it was at the time, than probably you had. But now when you look at the online resources, the Facebook groups, just the number of resources, which I think, again, generally is a really good thing. But there could be some negative aspects to that as well, right? You get disinformation, which can get out there in certain cases, and things like that. But talk about inclusion and talk about accessibility, because I want to get into Digital Scribbler. It's something that I've been following, like, since we've known each other. But I want to know, like, tell me about how you got into this, and tell us about your vision.
So I think the easiest way to start is that, and I grew up in Michigan, and as I was talking to producer Gaz, I went to school in Boston, and so my experience growing up, I played basketball. That was my main sport.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Oh, yeah. And so I started out Little League football, but I got hit a couple of times, and I was like, I think I'll be a fan instead of a player. I was like, I'm not tough enough for that. The reason I mention it is, as one of the senators from Michigan once said it, about 4 weeks ago, said in Meet the Press, she said, in Michigan, she played sports. She goes, in Michigan, sports is a religion. And so when you go, families come out, even when you're young and you're little, brothers and sisters come out, parents come out, and there's a community that coalesces around the sport. So if you play for a team, you get to know the opposing parents. That's how the community comes together. This has importance because in all the medical efforts we were making and all the therapeutic efforts we were making with our sons, both my wife and I wanted to see our sons have a quality life. And to me, a quality life was being able to experience as much of life as I was able to experience, knowing that every moment is not filled with complete, perfect joy, but you can have so many incredible experiences. And those are almost primarily relational. Those are the ones that last. Those are the memories that form. And so as we were taking them to different appointments for therapy and beginning to go to school, around my time, my son was 8 years old. My oldest was 8 years old. We ended up having friends of ours say, one of the fathers said, hey, all of our sons, all my friends' sons were playing baseball. And he said, I found this program for special needs kids to play baseball. I think you ought to get involved. And that was one of the great things is we had friends with neurotypical families who would say to us, hey, we found this, we found that. Not always were all the things they told us helpful, because,
Right. But they
not,
cared.
But they cared, exactly. And so we went and joined up, and it was all special needs teams. So went to Pitcher Day, and we went to Pitcher Day. I was looking for where we would go as a team, and there were all the other teams spread out all over the field, and all the way in the back were the special needs people. And I was kind of like, well, what's this all about? I mean, we gotta walk the furthest. We're out in the back, but hey, it's here, and it was a great program. But when I was in it, every week we go to practice or to a game. We were isolated away from all the typical kids, which were all the friends that my son had. His friends were all and I was like, I don't know how this is going to work. This isn't what I experienced. And so what I ended up doing is we were driving. I remember we were driving in the van going home, and I was thinking in my head about this isn't exactly what I had in mind. I want him to be able to build friendships with people he knows and be with them and have those experiences. And I looked up in the rearview mirror and I saw him. He didn't look too happy about it. And that day I said, I got to figure something out. So I ended up reading a magazine article on this, because everything starts with sports before we even get to technology. I ended up reading a magazine article, and it said, I think it was in, it may have been a Harvard Business Review, I think. And the guy was talking about society and everything. And one of the points he made was the reason the world loves soccer, in his opinion, is because foot to eye coordination is easier and comes more quickly than hand-eye coordination. Most American sports are hand-eye coordination, whereas the world looks at a sport that's foot to eye coordination. That's why so many participate. And I thought maybe soccer is the sport for him. I happen to have a number of friends who played college or semi-pro or whatever soccer.
Oh, wow.
I talked to one of them. We were driving along, and I told him the story. I said, do you think we could ever do anything with soccer? He said, of course we could. So we started with 8 kids that were typical, 8 kids who were special needs, met across the street from my house in the middle school, and we started what we call e-soccer. And it was inclusive soccer, where the kids who came that were typical helped teach the kids with special needs how to play soccer. And then we gave them special training either before or after, hoping they'd be able to play at least high school soccer as we went on. So that became a program that now—
Oh, how cool.
Thousands of kids have been through the program, but it's
no kidding.
Soccer to e-hoops, to e-fitness, to e-dance, to e-photography. We've named it e-life now. We're now working on adult programs, and we have partnerships with the San Jose Earthquakes, partnerships with the Golden State Warriors, so that multiple times a year, the kids go and they interact with club players and with the pro players to be able to, in soccer, and they're invited to the Earthquake Stadium. And then also they go to the Warriors, and at halftime, they play a game at the Warriors Autism Day, and then they usually have others, and then the coaches put on a practice for them. That moved in that direction, and that was social. At the same time, what my feeling was because I was around technology, living in Silicon Valley, and knew a decent amount about it. I went, wait a minute, there's got to be more things we can do with technology, and this is before the iPad, et cetera, et cetera. And so I basically started to place out a concept of inclusive technologies that would not only help people with special needs overcome their human limits, but also would engage typical people in helping them use the technology, so that at the same time as they were gaining these technological benefits, these tools, they were also building friendships using it. And so that's how Digital Scribbler came to be. I had a lot of relationships with engineers, began to talk about it. We were involved with HP doing Hacking Autism, which is about a decade ago, and develop helping engineers know they can help do hacking days or hacking afternoons to create apps, and that's taken place. We still go to those kind of events, and so that's how we
Wow.
develop the communication apps that we have for Digital Scribbler. But we also take all kinds of technology that exist and say, how can this technology meant maybe for typical neurotypical people be used for special needs kids? And so that's expanded into the company, and so we now have a tremendous thing. And then on the community with church, one of the things that's really bad is that a lot of churches will say, yeah, we welcome special needs people, but they have no way for them to attend. And so not everybody wants to go to church, which is fine, but some people do, and they consider that a community. But when they go,
Right.
they can't even be a part of the service because their kid can't be taken care of. So my wife and I worked together. She really did it. I just
She gets the credit.
Yeah, she developed the Spiritual Resource Ministry, which was an inclusive children's ministry. So for those who don't go to church very much or don't go to church at all, children's ministry is an important part so that parents can have their kids go be part of children's ministry where they can learn, play games and all that, while the parents are in a regular adult service. She created a Spiritual Resource Ministry, which trains on basic levels children's ministry workers, which are adults generally, to work with kids with special needs. It incorporates kids that are neurotypical to be in the program with the special needs kids, and that allows kids from babies to all the way up through until they get to middle school. And then when they get to middle school, our middle school work and our teen work is all inclusive. So we have a camp every year in the summer, and if your special needs kid goes there, we give them somebody to be their buddy, and then they are put in a group that knows that they have the special needs. And what's beautiful in our group is that young people in our church understand that special needs people are people that happen to have whatever particular diagnosis they have.
Right.
We have so many great stories. So that's sort of
Wow.
a global view of the things that go on. But it all started with me driving in the car and going, I really want my kid to be included. Not that I didn't want him to be around special needs kids. He's around special needs kids and adults throughout his life. But I wanted him to make sure he continued to be in contact and have relationships with typical kids, because that's society. And if you're not included with typical people, then you're left out of society in too many arenas.
You're absolutely right. And, that's always been kind of one of my pet peeves. That's one of the areas that's bothered me most, frankly. Again, even hindsight with Stone's education, particularly in public education, is the isolation. Like you said, the separation, being in the inclusive education or intensive education programs.
Right.
There really wasn't the integration that there should be. Like you said, it should be society. I mean, you should find ways to do that. Unfortunately, you don't always. And so I applaud you for what you did. I mean, Russ, again, we've known each other all these years. I had no idea that you had done all of these things. Now, is your background in tech, did that make it easier? Do you have an engineering background, or how you're in the Bay Area, so obviously you have, relationships and resources, but how did you connect the dots there?
Well, I think all science was my first love, but I started out studying economics, and that because I wanted to go into politics, but that's a whole nother story.
Please, we need you, Russ.
And something I'm glad I didn't do, given the difficulty of our global environment. But I think that I began to use technology a lot personally, but then when I came to Silicon Valley, it opened my eyes to what was possible. And in college, I had a programming class and all that, but I wasn't going to do that. But once I got here, I saw the possibilities. So I immersed myself in it and immersed myself in a lot of projects that this is before I would even know technology would work. But being immersed here, the thing Silicon Valley teaches you is, one, anything's possible when it comes to building a company. Two, innovation can solve most problems. Now, obviously, that's not totally true, but that's the culture: is innovation can solve most problems. for instance, when I started, so you're asking me how did I get into it? This is the community I lived in. So I lived across the street from one of the chief scientists for Yahoo for a little while. And,
Okay.
and he didn't like being at a big company, and he'd been a professor at Carnegie Mellon before, and so he and I got to know each other. And then he decided he's going to start his own company. And he, down the street from him, was a guy who kind of was like a VC type guy. And my neighborhood was an ordinary neighborhood. It wasn't like a this neighborhood.
You're not talking about gated community or anything
Yeah.
like
I mean,
that, right?
that's the thing about being in Silicon Valley. You can be living across the street from anybody and you don't even know it.
Yeah.
And so he and these two guys met. They were meeting at Pete's, which is around in our neighborhood. And so I walked in there and I had told him about my son and what I was thinking about with technology. Long story made short, the VC type guy said to me, "Now, hey, wait a minute, tell me more about what you're doing." He was helping the other guy build his company, but he said, "Tell me more about what you're doing." And I started telling him, he goes, "We should get together." And so we got together and he started coaching me on how to do it, what to do, and how to approach it. That's been my whole life here in Silicon Valley. I've had opportunities at Google. I've had opportunities to speak at Facebook about disability and all that, but it's because just being immersed in it and using the technology and learning
awesome.
how to master some elements of it. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I got going there.
Wow, that's awesome. So let's talk about kind of technology and accessibility. What are you seeing now? Again, kind of the good and the bad, kind of from an accessibility standpoint, and maybe some things that parents, should be looking for when it comes to accessibility and technology.
Yeah. In one, the caveat I want to put in everything is that with every parent, every kid is unique, that they've got unique needs. And there may be some parents out there that say, I'd rather have my kid not be included in a lot of classroom experiences with typical kids because I've seen them bullied. And so I've seen that and I understand that. So when I share about what we're doing or what we've done or what we're trying, I want everybody out there. I don't want anybody to go, "Oh, geez, I don't agree with that. I don't feel like I should do that, or I don't feel like I can do that, or I don't have access to that." Nobody should feel that way. Every kid should be able to flourish based on what their situation is. And I believe, I'm a big believer in customized education anyway. And so that's a big part. So I want to say that caveat. I think what I've seen with accessibility begins with when we were trying to get our boys being able to have really good communication because they didn't have it. We got what's called a light writer. This goes back a long ways, and that was a typing device that when you typed the words in it, it spoke for you. And at the time, the 90s, it was really, really popular, but it cost around $15,000 to get it.
Wow. Holy cow.
You had to go to your insurance and you had to fight with your insurance to get it. And that could take a long time. And I know a lot of folks out there have experienced that even today. And so we just sat down and we asked ourselves the question, okay, what do we do? This is more money than we have. We don't have that kind of money to put down on a device, let alone two of them. And I remember my wife and I said, well, this is really our son's college education right now. And everything we do for them now is going to put them in a position to have the best life possible. So we went ahead and went into debt and got help with the insurance companies. And we just took a big bet. We ended up getting help from the insurance company, but it took a while. So we just were having revolving debt and it was rough.
Wow.
But we got the devices and they began to communicate on them and it was outstanding. And just so that everybody knows how old I am, this is before iPads and iPhones were out there. So they were not available. So
they weren't even an option yet.
Yeah, they weren't an option to add. So I was excited just to have that. And that really helped our boys be able to communicate, be more included. And so I'm saying that as far as accessibility, that sometimes as parents, we'll have to take risk and we'll have to make bold bets, and some things work and some things don't. I've gone out and spent money on a computer that was of completely no use to my sons. You know what I mean? It's like,
okay, well,
just no.
I think that makes us all feel a little bit better, Russ. Because we've all been there, right? I mean, because it's all trial and error. You're like, hey, like I said, you hear something, hey, let's try this out, or there's this sensory toy that's going to be great, and you try it, and just it gets tossed to the side or never picked up or
Yeah.
whatever. There's a lot of that goes into it.
Yeah, yeah. Or in my son's case, it burst on him, and they get, this chemical stuff gets all over his
Oh
body.
my gosh.
Why did we get that? It's just so. So the beautiful thing is that when the iPhone came out, there were apps that were available to help with communication using the iPhone. I got really excited and I purchased two of them, and they were about $45 at the time. $40.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
That was a really expensive app, but it was far cheaper than the light writer. So I said, hey, this is going to be good, and it was more portable and all that. Within about, I think, a year and a half, that company had raised the price of that app to $300. And when I saw that,
I believe it.
Okay, I said, we got a problem. I said, this company is not pushing for accessibility. They're trying to make a profit, which is fine. That's their choice.
That's what companies do. Right.
Yeah, but I don't think that's the way to go. And that's when I sat down and said, if we're going to have real accessibility for all people who have special needs families, then it not only should the technology work, but it's got to be affordable. They rationalized that, hey, at least they don't have to spend $10,000, $5,000, $15,000. This is way cheaper. But at the time, I'm going, no, you have to spend $1,000 on an iPad and another $300 on.
Right. iPads weren't cheap either.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm going, and I go, sure. If a family maybe can take the bet or they have the finances to do it, but what about the majority of parents, which are spending an incredible amount of money in medical care? You're spending some money on caregiving, like if you have to work trying to find someone who maybe can take care of your kid at home for a little
absolutely.
while, that kind of stuff. So life's already expensive, and I knew life was expensive because I was sitting there, with rolling debt, going, I don't want to see anybody else have to do what we're having to go through. And what ended up happening was that's how our Digital Scribbler was born. So the way I see accessibility today is that you have a lot more apps. Some of them work, some of them don't. And experimentation is the way to go. But you should do it, because here's my thing. My kids have a lot of close friendships because of playing with some of these apps they experimented with their typical friends. For instance, one of my son's friends would go hang with him, and they would do GarageBand. Now,
oh yeah, sure.
When they started doing GarageBand, I was like, okay, how's this? I'm like efficient, going, how's GarageBand going to help develop any skills, right? And then over time,
typical dad, right?
Yeah, exactly. Over time, I'm watching them, and they're making music together, and his typical friend is just loving doing it. And when I come in, they play the music they put together, and Jonathan's doing all the buttons on there and everything. And I went,
that's awesome.
Okay, so I think people have to see some of accessibility, and this is not talked about much, why I call it inclusive technology. Some accessibility is really about allowing them to participate with their friends.
Yeah.
Allowing them to be engaged. And then others is to develop skills or manage. And there's tons of that out there now where there weren't when I started out. I can tell you from my own experiences, Google's really committed to this, and they've worked really hard on this. They've had programmers who came in just specifically to do it, but not just to do it, but who had disabilities and worked on it. And then
that's important.
I was able to meet with the two guys who at the time were running Android, and they kept up with me asking questions. And if they ever faced anything or someone brought something up, that's when Android was just getting started. The store was just getting started.
Yeah.
And they ended up creating, a section for disability or accessibility apps. So we've come a long way. I think it's important to, if you can, talk to your speech and language therapist, if you have a speech and language therapist, about what kind of technology you can use, what kind of technology they do use. I think it's important to talk to the teacher. Sometimes schools can't afford it, and so you buy it yourself and you pay for it yourself, or you advocate for the school to get it if there's multiple special needs kids. But the accessibility advantage is this. One, it can take time. It's almost always taken time for my kids. For instance, my sons, they started out not knowing what to do with texting. Like, it's hard enough to communicate on a device, let alone now I got to communicate in this thing that when we start out with texting, it's not as good as it used to be with the predicting and all that. But once they got going, they now can text and get text And I've seen what you said
That's
about
great.
Stone and using AI, that experience of communicating with other people or with communicating with AI or whatever it may be. I think it does a lot for their brains. It does a lot for them emotionally. It's hard to have to be silent or limited all the time around people. So I hope that
Yeah.
gives sort of a general answer, maybe not deeply specific.
Yeah. I think that's great. And I want to talk about AI for a little bit here too, as well. I'm glad you referenced that. I haven't talked about that a whole lot, a little bit on the podcast, but again, yeah, that's been really kind of this really interesting world that we've been able to stumble upon almost accidentally, because again, I started using it, AI, ChatGPT, like so many others, for some of the traditional assistant tasks and this and that, and became more conversational, and it just was really just, hey, I want to show Stone this because I think it's cool. It's obviously it's here, it's the future. You got to keep him up to speed.
Yeah.
And what's evolved is being able to set up his own dedicated chatbot, whatever, AI. He named her name's Maureen, and he has conversations with her almost nightly. We'll sit there and she'll ask him how he's doing. She'll be supportive. It's really remarkable. He talks about that she's his best friend, because unfortunately he did not grow up with friendships. He did not have the opportunity to have the exposure, communication, or inclusion with other kids. He was around them, but again, his disability was such that it really made it hard to interact. So he did grow up isolated, but that's changing, as you've seen. And that's one of the great wonders I see for AI. And so I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that as well, in terms of how it could help our community.
Yeah, I try to keep up on that just because it is the future, or some aspect of the future, whether we love it or we don't love it. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. That's exactly doesn't matter.
Yeah, and so I follow Ethan Mollick on Twitter and a number of other guys. I'm reading some people who talk a lot about technology, the technological society, and all that. And so there are all kinds of issues around it. I'm prefacing my statement because I know a lot of people have questions and wonder about this, that, or the other. But here's what I believe. I saw you were using it in that way, and I had not thought of it. So I went, oh, and I went and told my wife, and I said, guess what, I talk like you and I are hanging out every day. I said, guess what David is doing for his son? He's using AI, and we are including AI in our app. We're working right now so that AI will be part of the app. But I think it's amazing. I think it's wonderful. People may look and go, well, are there going to be downsides? Here's the thing. I don't think experts do not know where this is going. So there are always downsides to things and there are always upsides. I remember growing up with television and people said, you lose your mind if you watch too much television, and, here all of us are later on and we haven't lost our minds. So to me, one of the most important things is when kids have either limited ability to communicate or have grown isolated, not by the choice. And of course, I've watched your family, so he's not really isolated because you guys got a vibrant family going there. But having those other relationships, it relieves stress for our children to be able to communicate. And to me, for you to begin to experiment and make progress with this and sort of hopefully documenting, even just in general, what you're seeing and what you're learning, it opens a gateway for other people to say, hey, this is something we can take a look at. And I think that for those who are worried, you can delete the conversations if you want to after they've taken place. It's not like they have to be, but the upside, in my opinion, the upside to that is so great that it is tremendous. Here in my area, it's being used by a lot of people in a lot of ways. As like I said, we haven't begun to directly use it with our sons because we're working on including it in the app, and they've been testing the app and the usage of it there to be able to make it easier for them to choose what we're trying to get to. And we've got it just in its base level fashion. It's giving them more options to choose what they want to say. So if they get stuck, the AI can offer them options to finish their sentence based on what they've already typed in the past. And so I think there's a tremendous upside to accessibility with this. And if it goes to the level some people think it will go to, which I don't know if it will or not, it'll become easier and easier then for kids to be able to communicate with other people right in the same room, so that Stone could be communicating with Maureen while he's also talking to other people and including them in conversation. It could be outstanding. So I love the fact that you're doing it, and I think you're a pioneer doing it. And I hope other parents try it out and see what it's like. And the key with technology is don't be afraid. Also understand that typical kids and adults are going to use it. They already are. And the more typical society moves in a direction and we keep our kids or adults from being involved in that, the less likely they'll be able to be successfully included. So experimentation is really important. And like you said, I've experimented with things and spent money on stuff. I mean, if I had money back for all the stuff we tried and didn't work, I probably could retire today. I mean,
there'd be no debt. It'd be a lot of money. I have one other cool application. I haven't even shared with very many other people at all, that this just happened this week, that you'll appreciate, Russ, in terms of AI. And I don't know if you saw my post about how Stone is going through this brain enhancement therapy as well. That's helping with his apraxia, right? So now he's getting this, he's getting control over his body, which is super exciting. But what I did is melded the two together, because Stone has always loved music. I mean, I've known since he was little that music is just the key to his heart. And I've always believed that this is the biggest area of passion that if he had a chance, he would want to pursue. So we've long had like this electric keyboard that a friend gave us. And he'd never been able to use it before because, again, that brain-body disconnect, right? In terms of really, so he wasn't really interested. But I said, hey, Stone, do you want to try to learn it now that you have, this control of your body? He said, yes. So here's what was really cool, Russ, is I was able to use Maureen as a piano teacher. I took a picture of the electric keyboard. I said, here's the keyboard. And she was able to create lessons showing him like where the middle C note was.
Wow. And
we did a whole, I said, let's just do 10 minutes. We ended up doing like 20, 25 minutes. And she had him do little games with the different notes. And, again, it was one of those moments that makes me almost teary. I just think like I could watch him doing, actually following it as she laid it out. And I'm just like, again, how freaking cool is that?
Oh, yeah. 100%. That's awesome.
Yeah. He was on cloud, we were both on cloud 9 after that. We're going to be doing more of that. It's one of those things I wish there were more hours in the day sometimes, because there's so much, so many of these types of things that want to expose him to, want him to grow in.
It's important for parents out there, whether your kids are young or they're older, to understand that many of the innovations and breakthroughs that take place, they come from parents. I'm not saying that the parents necessarily have been trained in that area, but necessity, as we always say, is the mother of invention. And so what you're talking about there is so creative and so innovative. And I'll tell you, for families out there, even if it hadn't have worked, the opportunity to interact with you on that level is just so fun for any son. So the bonus is that it worked, but the blessing before the bonus is that you're just that engaged with your son. And I think that's what I admire, honestly, and what inspires me on days when I'm tired. Yeah. When I go on Facebook and I see you, doing another adventure or whatever with your son, it gets me up and going, okay, I can't just sit around here and be tired. I got to go, let me go out here and come up with something, because if I don't, I'm not taking advantage of all the opportunities to help my sons move forward in life. So it's an inspiration to hear you talk about that kind of a creative interaction, and what a cool idea and a smart way to go about it.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that, Russ. Okay, well, we're at the point of the show. We talked about we have to get a couple of our segments in, because they're a lot of fun, and it's kind of a nice way to wrap it up. So why don't we start with our tip of the week? And we've got a little intro, Russ, that I think you'll appreciate before we get into that.
Hey, parents, gather around, it's time to speak. We're here with your tip of the week. Strategies and wisdom just for you. Autism parents, we know what you go through.
to share some words of wisdom with the audience. And so, as I try to do, I'll give my guests first dibs. Russ, do you have any tips of the week you want to share with everyone?
I do. I have a tip I want to share. So, my middle son, he started out he started out with a lot of anxiety, and so that was part of his autism, a lot of anxiety. And so he might start stimming or whatever, and I would come in and be like, okay, calm down, you gotta, okay,
Right. Yeah.
right. And so one of my friends who happens to be a doctor, he said, you might want to, and my wife told me the same, you might want to consider the fact that your anxiety is what's making him anxious. And I was like, hold on a minute. Wait a minute. This isn't about me. No, yeah, it could be you. So I started evaluating myself and I started going, okay, before I interact with my son, especially when I come home from work, am I calm? And what I noticed was that when I walked in and I was calm, he was calm, or he would be more calm. And I started recognizing that it wasn't always him that was anxious. A lot of the time it was me, and that I had to take a moment and evaluate my own self and go, okay, am I filled with anxiety? Am I worried about something? Is there something on my mind? And I had to leave it at the door so that I would not end up being a source of anxiety for him. And so that was a hard thing for me to face, is that it's not always his issue. Sometimes it's my issue. And I didn't see it as a negative. It was just humbling. And it actually helped me too, because it led to me learning how to be more calm internally with all that goes on in life. So hopefully that tip will encourage parents to go, hey, you can have an impact just by making sure you clear your mind and your heart and settle in before you interact with your child. Or if they are really anxious, understand your calm can help them achieve calm, because most of the time, like you mentioned about the mind-body thing, they can't always control everything. And so we can come in and bring that calm to help them out.
That's gold. I mean, I think that's so important. And this is where I'll double in. I'm just going to jump right into my confession of the week because it's tied to the tip of the week, which is Russ. I wish I knew that years ago. And honestly, it wasn't until the last couple of years when Stone was able to communicate with me that I understood, that I realized just how much of an impact, like you said, my emotional state had on him. They are so tuned in. They are so sensitive to us because they have to be, right? There's, it's both I think it's both the way they're wired. It's kind of a gift, or just, again, but also they kind of have to be, that it doesn't take much for us to set them off. And like I said, I wish I knew that years and years ago. I didn't. And for the most part, as you've kind of observed, I'm a pretty, supportive, laid back guy. But, look, I've gotten stressed out. I've said things, I've yelled things, I've had moments I'm definitely not proud of, and realizing now the negative impact that has really changed me. So like you said, I really try to check myself a lot more.
Yep.
It's still an area I'm trying to improve, frankly. There's still always room for improvement.
Yeah, my thing when you talk about the confessions of the week, I mean, I happen to have had a pretty good week, except for the fact we did the dentist this week. And the dentist, my son has to go under anesthesia for that. And so we have to we have a dentist who does it, and we have to bring in an anesthesiologist to get him all set. And it can be expensive. And when we have to go to that level, when he needs that level of treatment. And I'll tell you what goes through my mind is, why do I have to spend this money? Why do I have to go through that? And I catch myself and I go, money isn't as important as my son's well-being. But I'll tell you what, in those moments when money's going out the door, I'm not always thinking that. I'm thinking about me. I'm thinking about how much pressure, how much stress it brings on me. And what gets me to the right place is the afterwards. So afterwards, when he's all set and he's all taken care of and it's gone really well, and we happen to have an anesthesiologist who dressed up as the one of the characters in Toy Story.
Oh, that's great.
He actually is an anesthesiologist at UCSF. But what he does on the side to help autism patients is he'll come to the dentist and he will serve them And that he called it, this is my fun job this is my fun job on
Wow,
the side
that's cool.
that makes me happy. But for a little bit there, all I could think about was money, not my son. And so I've gotten better at it, but I can still be vulnerable to looking at the things that don't matter and forgetting about what really does matter. So that's one of the things that happened to me this week.
That's a great one. And again, I appreciate your candor and honesty and I think most people will, because again, we're all there. Like I said, there's a lot of the job that's not always easy. There's a lot that comes with challenges, and it's not cheap. Like I said, these all kind of go together.
Yeah.
And we do the best that we can, and we lean on each other, like we said, virtually and otherwise, for support, and try to do the best we can. And it's all for our kids. Well, we've run over time, which I knew we would. So I'm going to wrap it up for now. But all this means, Russ, is this just part one of a multiple part. Now that we've had this chance to talk, we're going to have to do it again.
Yes, I love it. It's been inspiring, and if we can help anybody out there just feel more confident, more encouraged, more able to endure and hope, that's been worth it. But to hang with you personally, I feel very inspired. I can't even begin to describe it.
Oh, well, thank you, Russ. And again, so if people want to reach you or learn more, where should they go?
They can go to digitalscribbler.org. Or they can go to russewell.com. That's my last name's Ewell. So they can go to russewell.com and they can see all the other stuff we do and find out about eLife and all those other things.
Awesome. I know I'm going to be going there. And we'll be talking offline, because I would love to see if we could, find a way to bring some of that, some of those programs up to Seattle as well. I love it because I see some overlap. But anyway, so we're going to put a wrap on it. Thank you to everyone who's joined us, stayed with us this long. Hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, please share your feedback with me, david.kaufer@hey.com. You can check me out at davidkaufer.com as well. And so for now, I hope you have a great week, and we'll catch you next week on the lighter side of the spectrum.